let me just say it has been wonderful hearing from everybody who left comments, who messaged me about their personal Elvis experiences. I have really enjoyed hearing from you all. And, you know, as big a fans as we are, there's always something Elvis to talk about. And when I originally made that video, I was just going to touch on that briefly, but I do have a lot more to say about Elvis and some of the experiences that both I and my parents have had. Let me start off with this video. So you can see that I was in Nashville and I went to the Johnny Cash Museum, and in there is a wool gabardine jacket that Elvis wore for his performance in Lubbock, Texas. Now, according to that little card, this was his second time performing in Lubbock, and on this particular day in February of 1955, Buddy Holly and Bob opened up for Elvis, and Elvis loaned Buddy Holly his Martin guitar. Now, how cool is that? When I went to the Johnny Cash Museum, I hadn't anticipated anything Elvis. I remember growing up and listening to Johnny Cash, of course, and then seeing him on Little House on the Prairie. I don't know if you remember that, but when I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness, how cool is it to have a little bit of Elvis in the Johnny Cash Museum? So I wanted to talk about Johnny Cash today, and I just have one story that's fun. Aside from my visit to Nashville and got to see the entire exhibit, an exhaustive exhibit, it was so interesting to see instruments and clothing and school records. He had report cards and things. Now, I went there in, I believe it was the summer of 2017. So it's been a while, but I do remember they had little areas where you could wear headphones and listen to different recordings from different shows that he put on, concerts, those variety shows that everybody put on in the 70s, and early recordings and things. And that was really interesting for me to hear and take a listen to. I loved all of the records that they had, this huge wall of records, and it was just lined with the actual LPs. And then on the other side were the covers, the sleeves, album covers. And you just really got to see the impact that Johnny Cash had on country music and music in general, right? And so just seeing that really warmed my heart. Now, I have also been to the Buddy Holly Museum in Lubbock, Texas. It is on a smaller scale. They don't allow any photography or video recording. I'm not sure why, but it is a smaller exhibit. The Johnny Cash exhibit was huge. I know that in that building was Patsy Cline as well, and I'll have a Patsy Cline story in a next video. But one funny story about Johnny Cash, in fact, I'm going to have to go see if I can pull up a picture, and then I'll get back to you with the story. So that fun picture was taken in Long Beach, California, and it's all fake. Like, I had asked my dad about it, and he said it was just a photo op that they had there. I guess they would go to the amusement park. It was sort of like the pier where they had different rides, and the is it called the Ferris wheel? The Ferris wheel. And so they would go. My dad and his brother Roger would go and hang out there with their friends. But this particular photo is fake. So it's just a photo op. It's, the jail, and they have like a couple of bottles for props and things. And I just really love that photo. So, in fact, my parents have a photo in that photo op as well. I think I showed that on my grandmother's dress video. I'll have to link it in the description. But they used to always go places together, and they had that sort of, rockabilly hairstyle, and they wore the coolest clothes. And they would get mistaken a lot for Johnny Cash and Elvis. I mean, go figure. It was the 50s. And the two of them weren't these mega stars yet. They were up-and-coming stars. They were on the touring circuit. They were doing small little venues, state fairs, county fairs, things like that, or like a pier down in the barracks where the military was. It wasn't these big touring venues that they eventually their careers skyrocketed, right? So in the early days, when my dad and my uncle were out and about, they used to get mistaken for Johnny Cash and Elvis. And so my dad has this one story where, well, actually has two stories, but I love this one because, they used to get in fights because there would be some girls inevitably, all excited and pointing and thinking that, oh my goodness, it's Elvis and Johnny Cash. And then the guys that the girls were with, or the local guys, would get pretty upset because they thought they had stiff competition, right? And so they used to get in fights a lot. I love these stories. And my dad and my uncle, they're not very aggressive. They're not they're not troublemakers at all. In fact, they're very quiet. They're very shy, and they're family oriented. They're family men. And so when I hear about them getting in fights and being mistaken for celebrities, I just think it is the funniest thing ever, and I love it. So to I talked to my dad. He's in Las Vegas and I'm in Texas, so I wanted to interview him for all of the fun 50s and 60s stories that he had, but it's long distance, so maybe I'll get him to tell me some stories when I go to visit him in Vegas again. But okay, so in 1962, he and Harold went, it was around New Year's, so they went to go see Johnny Cash, and they waited and waited and waited. And my dad said that he was late showing up. And so, they were waiting and waiting for Johnny Cash to show up. And so finally, he arrived extremely late, and then he showed up. My dad said he was higher than a kite. So I don't know if he was drunk or if he was, on the stuff. But he said that he got up to the mic and he was laughing so hard. He said, I've been laughing because I heard that I got killed in a plane crash in San Bernardino. And he just kept laughing. And then my dad says that he played one song. He didn't even make it all the way through the one song. And he just set the guitar down and he left. He left. He never came back. And so that was that. They waited and waited and he showed up and that was it. That was his experience, his first time seeing Johnny Cash. And so then the second time, this was at the LA Forum in 1986. And so this was with my dad's brother, Roger. And Roger was wearing all black. And they were walking by. And there were a few people pointing. Again, this was happening again. They were pointing and they're like, look, there's Johnny Cash. There's Johnny Cash. And he would say, no, I'm not Johnny Cash, because I'm sure he's thinking we're about to get into another fight, right? And this is in the 80s. So now they're older. They're like, what, in their 40s? And it's like, hey, wait a minute. I swear I'm not Johnny Cash. I don't need to get jumped, right? I just love these stories so much. And so it's so cute to me that the brothers are close, but you saw that picture of Elvis with Johnny, and I think it's funny how, they just were always mistaken. And I remember in the 70s going over to family's house and Christmas and all that stuff, and going over to Uncle Raj's house, and he really did look like Johnny Cash. He had the hair and he had sort of that jawline, and he really does look like Johnny Cash. Well, he looks like, because see, Johnny, he had a hard life, right? A lot of alcohol, a lot of drugs, a lot of touring. I would like to say that maybe my uncle was the more mild version of Johnny Cash, the more reserved and subdued, and the maybe the brother of. He wasn't as wild and out there as Johnny Cash, but what a legend Johnny Cash is, right? And I really loved going to his museum. It was actually the first thing that I wanted to do when I got there. And I have a slideshow coming up of all of the photos that I took. I'm not sure that every single one is in there, because some of them were dark and there were other people standing there. And I really wanted good, clean photos to put in this sort of slideshow for you to see. But I just remember listening to his music, not as much as Elvis, but I do remember his presence. I remember Johnny Cash, Glenn Campbell, Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers. Those were probably the big names that I remember within that genre that were played a lot in our home and on the radio, and even at our family's house when we had functions and parties and there was music playing in the background, because I do come from a musical family. And I don't know, I think it's so neat how everything comes full circle, and I really enjoyed it. So if you guys ever get to Nashville, make a point of going to see the Johnny Cash Museum. You will love it. It is very entertaining, very informative, educational, and you get to see all of these artifacts, all of the awards that he's won, the Grammys, the music awards, his clothing. I really loved looking at June Carter, and he had all of these stage clothing, and then some of their regular clothing that they had for events when they met the president, and all of these special occasion clothing items. And it's just so awesome to see up close. And I do know that at Graceland they have that now. I don't want to go back to Graceland. It's like I said, it's kind of a cash grab, but I really enjoyed seeing Johnny Cash's family piano, and even the little box of chocolate that he bought June for Valentine's Day. Little artifacts like that just really made it personal, you know? You got to see him as a performer, but you also got to see him off stage too, the things that were important to him in his life. So I'm going to leave you with that slideshow. Now I'm hoping, I'm hoping that I can hear from Johnny Cash fans, those of you who have seen him. I've not had the opportunity to see him live, but like I said, I just gave you 2 stories of when my dad got to see him, and I'd love to hear your stories. I think it's so interesting to hear about that time, that era, the 60s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. To me, that was the best time for music. Everything was new, fresh, exciting. They were breaking records, breaking through barriers, lots of local talent getting recognized. I really think it was a special time. So yeah, just leave me a comment. Let us all know in the comments what your Johnny Cash memories are, or if you ever saw him live, or any fun stories that you may have about Johnny Cash. I think he's wonderful, and I'll leave you with this slideshow.